Chapter 3 Scrapes and Sweet New Beginnings. Jerome. 2 weeks had gone by, and just as his daddy predicted, Tasha Day's schedule increased. She'd gone from having 2 shy students to 8 curious ones, and Jerome seemed to spend more of his time during the day working as her assistant than as a youth minister. I understand, Mrs. Williams, but right now our tutor is only available for a limited time during the week. If you wish to reserve time for her to tutor your daughter, please leave a message at the number that we have provided, and she will contact you directly. Jerome repeated the number to the older woman, and as he ended the call, he thought about not putting the phone back on its receiver so he could finally have a little peace. That was the 4th parent today calling to book a tutoring session for their child. He noted. She was great with the kids, Jerome had to admit that. If he had had a teacher like her in school, he would have been just as eager to learn as the kids from the church are when they were in the office with Tasha. She insisted on leaving the door open during all of her lessons, and Jerome could hear her laugh every so often. Her voice rang through clear, never raised, but stern when necessary. Jerome wanted to get a peek into Tasha's current lesson, so he left his office and walked down the hall after finishing his expense report for the jamboree in the next few weeks. When he turned the corner, he didn't see anyone sitting at her desk. Instead, there was a large whiteboard against the left wall with the words, "Why change should not be up for debate," written in purple ink. Tasha was watching intently as Patricia, whose family was new to the congregation, was writing something down. Tasha hid a laugh behind her lips with her hands before walking up to the younger girl. "Okay, now we're getting somewhere. I know what you're saying, but how can we make it sharp?" she asked. Patricia must have looked just as confused as Jerome was, because Tasha explained further. "We know your opinion on this political debate and why, but I need an example to strengthen your stance. Make it relevant and be mindful of your grammar." She instructed gently. "Remember, if you're going to resort to using slang, the house wins, and we have enough men in the house as it is." Patricia must have found the last line funny, as she giggled before going to write on the whiteboard again. Tasha was soon laughing too as she read what the younger girl had written for her last sentence. "What you said about having enough men in the house helped me think of what I wanted to say," the young girl mumbled. Tasha took out a blue dry erase marker, and Patricia's eyes widened. "What is she going to do?" Jerome wondered to himself. He watched on as Tasha surveyed the sentence that Patricia wrote, and her smile left him feeling stupid. She then took the marker and drew what looked like dancing stars on the whiteboard, causing both of them to break out into more giggles. "Outstanding work, Patricia. Fantastic use of heteronyms in the last sentence. Not gonna lie, you had me worried in the first half though, but you pulled through." Tasha praised the younger girl, making her cheeks redden just enough for Jerome to see from the room's entrance. They then high-fived one another before the buzzer on Tasha's desk went off. Patricia grabbed her backpack and notebook as Tasha called out to her while taking a screenshot of what they had written on the whiteboard. "I'll send you this pic so you can finish up the rest of your essay, and I want to see an email of what you've written, no later than Friday morning. Cool?" she confirmed. Patricia nodded gleefully. "Okay, Miss Tasha, see you later." The girl almost bumped into Jerome on her way out of the room. As he was walking back to his office, he heard Tasha's voice. "Are you in need of English lessons as well? Or just a reminder in good manners?" Jerome froze. Turning around, he saw her leaning against the doorframe, her hair now down and cascading around her face. Tasha's eyes looked softer somehow to Jerome, with her mid-length twist framing her full cheeks. "Are you going to continue to stare at me like a lost dog, or answer my question?" she asked. For the last few weeks, Jerome would usually let her sly remarks fall by the wayside, but after having to field calls for her all day instead of spending more time on his own task, he was done with Tasha being short with him. Cautiously, Jerome entered the room, walked up to her, and sat down across from her desk. "I mean no disrespect by looking in on your lessons, Miss Tasha," Day. Call me Miss Day, she interrupted. Sighing, Jerome continued. I just don't understand why you're so cold toward me. What have I done to warrant this treatment? He asked sincerely. Tasha looked at him before she turned away to wipe down the whiteboard and finally sat at her desk. She then looked at her phone before speaking. I know you remember me from that night at my other job, and I don't need any problems with this one. My homegirl recommended me for this position, and I want to do well for her sake. The only way I can think of to keep order here is by putting and keeping you on a short leash. Jerome blinked several times before he addressed all that she shared with him. So, because of the actions of a few, you're keeping me at arm's length? He confirmed. Tasha nodded and he laughed. What's so funny about that? She snapped, looking straight at him. Jerome stopped laughing as he explained. Women get mad when men do stuff like that, and here you are, treating me so rudely. Do you not see the double standard in your actions? Tasha stared at him for several beats before her phone buzzed. Looking down at the phone screen, she picked it up and began typing as she spoke again. Tasha stared at him for several beats before her phone buzzed. Looking down at the phone screen, she picked it up and began typing as she spoke again. I hope you remember that PSA the next time you hang out with your little friends. Please share your new findings with them at y'all next Fried Fish Fridays. You can leave now. Jerome looked taken aback. Just who was this woman? He wondered. Getting up, Jerome looked on as she finished typing on her phone and stared up at him. She then picked up a clipboard and steadied it before looking at him again. Did you need something else, Jerome? She said evenly. This time Jerome didn't hide his annoyance. Frowning, he asked Tasha, How do you do that? Her eyes squinted as she asked him directly. Do what, exactly? Jerome sighed heavily before continuing. How can you be so great with students and treat me like something you stepped in? I have been nothing but respectful toward you, but you speak to me as if I'm some... Tasha put down the clipboard in her hand and crossed her arms over her chest. Some what, Jerome? Some horny guy that refuses to take no for an answer, so he feels the need to resort to manhandling women to take what he wants? Some drunk that thinks women are beneath him, especially those that work at a gentleman's club? Some what, Jerome? Please enlighten me as to where to group you in the future, so I don't have to give you any more of my time. He had never heard a woman speak so brazenly inside a church before, and Jerome was about to remind Tasha just where she was, but her next student had walked into the room. Hi, Miss Tasha. I have my homework ready for you to look at like you asked. Jerome almost did a double take as he watched Tasha's face soften when she stood up to greet James, a high school sophomore and the youngest son of one of the deacons at the church. She went over to the young boy, and the two fist bumped before James looked at Jerome. Why is he here, Miss Tasha? Are you in trouble? The boy teased as Tasha giggled. I don't know why he's still here. Maybe you can ask him to tell you. Jerome was left speechless as the two of them looked at him expectantly, and he slowly shook his head. I was just checking in with Miss Day, about her schedule. We can finish discussing it at another time. Jerome sputtered out as he made his way out of the small office. Tasha called out to him. There's no need to discuss it any further, but thank you for stopping by. I'm glad we finally got to chat. Jerome felt like his entire face was on fire as he watched Tasha begin her lesson with James. Why does she feel the need to treat me this way? He thought furiously. Jerome could hear his office phone ringing, and he jogged to answer it. Hello, Jerome. I wanted to know when Miss Day would be free to tutor Keisha. Carmichael's girl had nothing but sweet things to say about her, and our baby could use a little extra help in her classes. Jerome closed his eyes as he relayed the same message again to the parent on the end of the line. Once the call was done, he puckered his lips together before disconnecting the receiver cord from the wall and reclining into his desk. Tasha. 3 weeks into working her new job, Tasha was ecstatic. Her students were really sweet. They mostly just lacked confidence in their abilities, so Tasha showered them with praise during their lessons. After her chat with Jerome the week before, she noticed a change in his demeanor. No longer did she find notes on her desk from parents that wanted to schedule tutoring sessions with her. Instead, there was a new bulletin board just outside Tasha's door. It listed her available schedule as well as her contact number. Nice work, Jerome, she thought as she entered her room. One of her favorite students, Patricia, walked in soon after she did, and from the look of the younger girl, Tasha could tell it was going to be a long lesson. Her school uniform was torn around the collar and covered in what looked like some sort of black markings. Once Tasha saw Patricia's face up close, she went into her top drawer and took out the first aid kit. Walking over to Patricia, Tasha sat in the chair closest to the desk and motioned for Patricia to sit next to her. The younger girl dragged the chair toward Tasha, who then opened the kit and began cleaning the scratches around Patricia's eye and cut on her upper lip. So, do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to just teach and mind my business? Tasha asked her flatly. Patricia looked up at her and squinted her eyes. You ain't like other teachers, Miss Tasha. Tasha feigned shock as she gasped loudly. Really? I guess that's because I'm technically just a tutor, not a teacher, huh? Patricia giggled and then tensed up for a second as Tasha applied a light dab of the ointment to her bruises. I guess we can do both, Patricia mumbled. Tasha nodded. Cool. Start when you're ready, and I will listen. No judgment here. She pointed to the tutor rules chart on her desk, and Patricia sighed as she recited the second rule. This space is a judge-free zone, so do your best not to judge me, and I will do the same. Satisfied with her response and putting a band-aid over the largest of the bruises, the one near Patricia's left eye, Tasha closed up the first aid kit and waited patiently for Patricia to begin. Okay, so I have this friend at school who likes his boy, right? She asked me what I thought of him, and when I told her he was boring and not as smart as he wants people to think he is, she got mad and stopped talking to me. Tasha nodded as Patricia continued. Well, come lunchtime, some girl came to my table saying I was talking smack about her brother. I was like, I don't even know you or your brother. Then my friend said that I said he was stupid. So I stood up and told the girl that that's not true. What I said was he was boring. Then the girl got loud and called me. Tasha gently pressed on. She called you what, Patricia? Tears formed in the young girl's eyes as she shouted. She called me a closet licker. Seeing how upset the girl was, Tasha felt bad for having to ask, what is a closet licker? As Patricia stared at her incredulously, Tasha chose then to remind her, look, I am much older than you, and don't keep up with all the slang y'all be using these days, so I'm sorry, but I really don't know what that phrase means. Tasha watched as Patricia cleared her throat to explain. It's what we call girls that secretly like other girls, Miss Tasha. A lesbian. She put her hand on top of Patricia's as she spoke directly to her. Okay, first things first. There is nothing wrong with being a lesbian. You got that? The girl's eyes widened as she nodded slowly at Tasha. And second, is that really what this fight was about? She asked. Patricia stared down at her hands. Well, I don't know. I remember seeing my friend laugh with everyone else when that girl said that to me. I got angry and I swung at her first, and then the other girl started hitting me. Damn. So her homegirl flipped and left her hanging. Tasha thought sadly. So, you weren't angry about what the other girl said, but by what your friend did. She clarified. Patricia thought over what Tasha asked her and frowned. Yeah. Tasha pressed on. Why did that make you angry? I thought she was my friend, and then she just laughed when that girl made fun of me. Tasha looked at Patricia as the girl realized what she said, and her eyes widened. Deciding that that was enough self-discovery for one day, Tasha stood up and went to the whiteboard to begin their English lesson. The two worked quietly after their talk, as Tasha wrote a few example sentences onto the board. Then Tasha explained to Patricia that she was to read each sentence, find the errors, and then correct the mistakes within the sentences. Every few minutes, Tasha would feel Patricia's eyes on her, but she ignored it and continued instructing when necessary. Before the buzzer went off, signaling the end of their lesson, Patricia put down her marker and faced Tasha. "Miss Tasha?" Patricia whispered. "Hmm," Tasha said as she looked over the corrections Patricia made in the last sentence. "Am I going to hell?" The shock must have shown on Tasha's face because Patricia quietly explained. "My mama said that girls that like girls won't go to heaven because it's a sin." Feeling a slight stinging building behind her eyes, Tasha looked down at the younger girl. "Now, a disclaimer real quick. I am not the most religious person. I can't even tell you the difference between the New Testament or the Old one, okay?" Patricia laughed, and seeing the girl's eyes light up tugged at Tasha's heartstrings. "I say that to say this. I may not know much about the Bible, but I doubt that the big OG in it would send someone as kind and clever as you to hell for not liking boys." Patricia looked at Tasha as she finished answering her question. "Since we were all supposed to be made in his image, why would he cast you off for being the way he made you?" Before Patricia could say a word, there was a knock at the door. The two turned to see Jerome standing awkwardly in the frame. "Patricia, your mama is waiting for you outside," he informed them quietly. "I just know you were eavesdropping again," Tasha thought as she narrowed her eyes his way. The younger girl took out her phone and snapped pictures of the whiteboard before Tasha could. As she left the room, Tasha called out to her about the rest of their lesson and her homework. "Please send me those pictures and make sure to finish the last 3 sentences before." Tasha's eyes went wide as saucers as the young girl turned around and sprinted back toward her, wrapping her arms around her waist. "Thank you, Miss Tasha," Patricia murmured into her chest. Slowly, Tasha hugged her back, rocking them gently from side to side before Patricia broke their embrace and ran out of the room. Okay. I need something sweet before my next lesson," Tasha thought. Going back to her desk to get a snack from the bottom drawer, she heard Jerome speak again. "James won't be in today. His daddy called earlier today to let us know he broke his arm during JV football practice today and is at the hospital." Hearing this news, Tasha sat down. "Thanks, Jerome," she mumbled. "Are you okay?" he asked as he walked back into the room and sat down in the chair across from her. "I didn't think this job would have me wound up like this," Tasha admitted to herself. "I think I'll leave early today, since my last student won't be coming in. Is that okay?" He stared at her and nodded. "Yeah, but you haven't answered my question." When she realized she hadn't, Tasha laughed softly. "You're right, I didn't. In that case, no, I'm not okay today," she admitted out loud. Jerome stood up and looked at Tasha before he asked her another question. "Did you have lunch yet?" She looked up at him and smiled.